I'm Christine Klon, professional speaker, chemical engineer, Mensa member, and entrepreneur. Welcome to Caffeine Breaks, where I spend 10 minutes or less giving tools and strategies to STEM leaders in industry. Today's topic, basics of game theory. So game theory is a mathematical and economic concept where you create the best strategy for yourself or your company based off of the other players, what you think they're going to do, the type of game, and the ultimate payoff you're trying to achieve. So in game theory, we have different types of games. The first type of game, we have zero-sum versus non-zero-sum games. So the best example of a zero-sum game is watching your two football teams battle it out, which I've done recently, and there's only one winner and there's a loser. It doesn't matter how it ends, there always has to be a winner and loser. So the ultimate payoff is either you win or lose. There's no change in that. A non-zero-sum game is best explained by negotiating contracts in industry. You have all sorts of options. You have many options you can choose from of what you want to negotiate, what's non-negotiable. So there can be many different payoffs that you can achieve through a non-zero-sum game. There's also spontaneous versus sequential games. A spontaneous game, rock, paper, scissors, or being on a reality TV show where you all have to vote someone off an island at the same time, not knowing fully what everyone chose to do. A sequential game is more common, like chess, where you make a move, the other person makes a move, the other team makes a move. Football, right? You change who has the possession of the ball. So most of the games we see are sequential games, and that would include contract negotiation. Not necessarily meaning you're going through the contract in order, but that you're each getting a chance to respond. Whether it's buying a house, putting in an offer, waiting for a response, counter offers, and things like that. There's also perfect information versus non-perfect information games. Perfect information games are going to be most of your board games, right? Chess, checkers, where you see non-perfect information games. An example of that would be Battleship, because you know when you miss, but you don't know when you hit, so you don't have all the information. And another example of non-perfect information games would be poker or blackjack, depending on the casino, if you can't see the other card. And finally, the fourth type is cooperative versus non-cooperative games. Now, cooperative games, again, you're going to see in a reality TV show where you can form alliances and perhaps you can win, but you get less of a payoff if you have to share that payoff. So, of course, that's where you have to assess those variables. But being cooperative in a situation might get you a better win versus not winning at all. And non-cooperative games is what we would typically see, again, two teams fighting it out on the field, or what we would normally consider a business negotiation, where you have two different sides. Both sides are trying to get what they want without being cooperative. But there is an opportunity here that most people don't explore, in that if you can turn a business negotiation into a cooperative game where both people feel like they won, then you have a better shot at success. And I think of this random example from the movie Pretty Woman, where at the very end of the movie, instead of going in and taking over a company and selling it for its parts, he actually talks to the former owner to find out what was really important to him to understand the negotiation. And they decided to actually go into business together and create a new partnership. So I feel like that's a good example of where a non-cooperative game was turned to a cooperative game, even if it was just in a movie. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is your strategy. So when I think about strategy, I think about it in terms of dimensions, because I'm a chemical engineer. So when I think of the 3D, I imagine a chessboard set out on a beautiful table with just your chess pieces. So if you come to that game, you already have your strategy in mind because it's probably worked for you before, and you may have a few alternate strategies, but you have a basic idea of what you plan to do to win this negotiation or this game. The 4D is where you're starting to take game theory into account. You're not just looking at what your strategy is. Okay, this is where you're looking at who you're playing. Okay, if it's chess, is this a grandmaster? Okay, where are they rated? So who are you actually playing? What's important to them? Can you predict their behavior? based on previous interactions with them or the information you find out about them. So 4D is where you're saying, okay, I have my strategy, but my strategy depends on their strategy. And the most that I can understand their strategy, I have a better shot at winning. And then there's the 5D. Not many people play in the 5D. It's a good time. The 5D is when you're getting into actually affecting the other person's behavior, not just assessing it, but actually impacting it. And examples of this would be art of war, appear weak if you're strong, appear strong if you're weak. We see this in hostage negotiations. Things like creating randomness or chaos to throw off the other parties, whether it's through timing or withholding something. All of those things are 5D game strategies. Home field advantage is my best example of that. Based on the research that's been done, there actually isn't much account for crowd noise. Being booed by the other team doesn't seem to actually impact players that much. But they still don't know exactly why home field has such an advantage. Is it the fact that you slept in your own bed last night? Is it the fact that your body's comfortable with where you are versus being in a strange place? So there still isn't an exact science to it, but psychologically, those things can all affect a person. Whether you had good sleep last night or you didn't before you're playing a game can certainly impact your performance. And I do want to give a warning here. Game theory is fantastic for a lot of things. Games, sports, business negotiation, even some kinds of relationships. But I do want to warn you, never apply game theory to people you love, okay? Because if you do, while you might win, you're going to find yourself standing alone on a chessboard of your own making with no one to blame but yourself. So be careful with your game theory strategies. The last thing I want to talk about is Nash equilibrium. And a lot of you have heard this in A Beautiful Mind, okay, John Nash and all of his work on game theory. Nash equilibrium is a point during a negotiation or a game where if I change my strategy without changing another person's strategy, we can't make any progress. Okay, my change alone will not affect the outcome. So in order to move past, let's say, a stalemate in a negotiation, we're both going to have to do something. We're both going to have to change our strategies together to actually achieve the goal. And what I thought was an interesting quote is that Nash equilibrium assumes every player has correct beliefs about the other players. And even if you know the other players, you have to ask yourself, how well do they know themselves? Because that matters in how your ability to assess them. And I want to leave this with an example from my own life, going through a child custody negotiation, which is by definition kind of a no-win situation. And there was a point where we had negotiated some small things and we were making progress, and then we hit a stalemate. And my mediator continued to want to make progress on the small things. But I quickly realized that there was one point that kept coming up during the negotiation with the other party. And it was a point that wasn't that important to me. My mediator wanted to hold it out over the other party and say, I'll give this to you, but only if you meet all my demands. But I felt like we were at the point nobody was going to budge. So I made the decision that I would give that point up. I said, I will be happy to give this holiday up. But in exchange, I want the one thing that I really want. And it did work. I was able to actually, he got what he wanted, I got what I wanted. And once we had made that point through that hardest thing that kept just stopping us, all of the other things just fell away. All the little things, we negotiated them very quickly and we got through it. And we were both fairly happy with how it came out. So I encourage you to use game theory strategy, know the other players, know what the payoff is. And if you want to, employ some fun 5D strategies, but just be careful. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and please subscribe for more caffeine breaks in the future.